Samuel could see the defiance rising in her eyes even as her voice trembled. She stood straight, brushing dust from her knees, and for the first time he noticed just how young she was, not yet fully grown into the sharp lines of adulthood. Her braids, partly undone by the struggle, framed a face that was both proud and weary, as though she had carried burdens far heavier than her years should allow. The wind caught at the beads on her clothing, making them click softly like a warning bell. "You don't understand," she continued. "In my people's way, to be saved from certain death binds me to you. I cannot return home as I was. I would be dishonored, lost. You've taken my fate into your hands." Samuel shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. He had lived among enough frontier towns to know the old traditions of gratitude, of debts that couldn't be repaid with money or words. But this was something different, deeper. He wasn't about to shatter her belief, nor was he about to take advantage of it. He bent down, picked up his sack, and said quietly, "Girl, what's your name?" She hesitated, then spoke with quiet pride. "Naomi." The name rolled off her tongue with the lilt of her people's cadence, but also with an echo of the world that pressed upon them, the world of settlers, ranchers, soldiers, railroads cutting through the land. She watched his face carefully, as if waiting for him to mock her or turn away. Instead, Samuel simply nodded. "Naomi," he repeated, almost to test the weight of it. "That's a fine name. Now listen here, Naomi. I ain't the sort of man who takes a woman's promise as payment. What I did because it was right, and because no one deserves to die like that. You don't owe me your life." But Naomi shook her head, her jaw set. "You saved me. My people will say my spirit belongs to you now. Whether you accept it or not, I cannot go back to them unchanged. They will see it in my eyes, in my steps. I am bound." Her words carried a tragic finality that made Samuel's chest tighten. He looked down at the rails, still humming faintly from the train that had just roared past, and wondered what kind of God would place him in the path of a girl whose whole life had been altered in a single moment. He thought of all the days behind him, drifting from job to job, never planting roots. And now here was Naomi, tethered to him by nothing but a choice he would have made 1,000 times over, even for a stranger. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sigh of the wind and the faint rattle of the prairie grass. Finally, Samuel spoke, his voice softer now. "Well then, Naomi, if that's the way of it, I reckon we best figure out what comes next. You got family nearby? A village?" Her gaze flickered, and a shadow passed over her face. "No," she said at last. "Not anymore. Raiders came 2 winters past. The army burned what was left. I was taken in by an uncle who cared little for me, and when I wandered too far today, the rails caught me. Perhaps this was where I was meant to end." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she swallowed hard, refusing to let tears fall again. Samuel felt a lump rise in his throat. He had seen enough sorrow on the frontier to know truth when he heard it. This girl had lost more than anyone her age should have, and the world had given her nothing but ashes. He stepped closer, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You weren't meant to end here," he said firmly. "You were meant to keep going. You hear me? You got a life ahead of you, Naomi, and I'll see you safe to it. That's a promise." For the first time, Naomi's face softened. Her lips trembled, and a tear slipped free, but this one carried something different, relief, maybe even hope. She nodded slowly, and Samuel felt the weight of an unspoken trust settle between them. The sun had begun to dip lower, staining the sky with streaks of amber and gold. Samuel glanced westward and said, "Come on. There's a creek a mile or 2 from here. We can rest there, get water. Then we'll decide where to head." They walked in silence for a while, the dry earth crunching beneath their steps. Samuel kept a steady pace, always half a stride ahead, scanning the horizon with the instincts of a man who had learned long ago that danger came quickest when you least expected it. Naomi followed quietly, her small figure carrying both dignity and exhaustion. From time to time, Samuel caught her watching him, as if trying to measure the man who had pulled her from death itself. At the creek, they knelt and cupped the cool water to their lips. Naomi drank deeply, her hands trembling slightly. Samuel noticed how thin she was, her wrists narrow, her skin marked by scars of a hard life. "You eaten enough these days?" he asked casually, though the concern in his voice was plain. She gave a half-smile, bitter but brave. "Enough to stay alive. No more than that." Samuel frowned, pulling a small bundle from his sack. He unwrapped a piece of cornbread and some jerky, pressing it into her hands. "Here. Don't argue. You'll need your strength." Naomi stared at the food for a moment, then at him. Slowly, she accepted it, her eyes shining in the fading light. "You are kind," she murmured, almost to herself. He shook his head. "Just human, Naomi. That's all." The morning sun rose pale and golden across the prairie, spilling its light over the wide plains as if the earth itself had been washed clean. Samuel stirred from the ground where he had slept, his back stiff but his mind already alert. Years of drifting had taught him never to trust the safety of a night too much, but this dawn felt different. He glanced to his side and saw Naomi curled beneath the blanket he had given her, her breathing soft and even, her face untroubled by nightmares for the first time since they met. Something in his chest eased at the sight. He had promised to see her safe, and though he did not know yet how he would keep that promise, he felt more certain than ever that turning away from her would never be an option. When she woke, she sat up slowly, brushing strands of hair from her eyes, and for the first time Samuel saw a shy smile tug at her lips. "I thought maybe it was a dream," she said softly, "that someone would pull me from the rails, that someone would stay." Samuel chuckled, shaking his head. "Ain't no dream, Naomi. You're stuck with me now, at least, till we figure out where you belong." Her eyes lingered on him, searching, then dropped to the blanket she clutched. "I don't belong anywhere," she murmured. "Not with my people, not with yours. The rails cut my world in two, Samuel. You saved me from them, but they already took everything else." Her words stung him with their truth. He had walked both sides of that line, working jobs for settlers and ranchers while watching native families driven from their land. He had seen kindness and cruelty both, and he knew the world had little patience for those caught between. Still, he wasn't about to let Naomi believe she was nothing more than a lost soul. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "Listen to me, Naomi. You belong right here, right now. And that's enough for today. Tomorrow, we'll worry about tomorrow." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. It was not acceptance, not yet, but it was trust. They packed up what little they had and began walking again, heading toward a small trading post Samuel knew lay west of the creek. It wasn't much, just a cluster of wooden buildings and a general store, but it would give them a chance to restock supplies and maybe ask about safer routes. The land stretched endless around them, the sky so vast it seemed to swallow their footsteps whole. As they walked, Samuel told her stories of his drifting years, the time he broke horses for a rancher in Kansas, the winter he nearly froze driving cattle north, the summer he mended fences for a widow with 5 children who paid him in pies and gratitude. Naomi listened intently, her laughter coming in small, cautious bursts when he colored the tales with humor. He could tell she wasn't used to laughing, but every time she did, the air between them felt lighter. By midday, they spotted the outline of the trading post in the distance. But as they drew closer, Samuel's gut tightened. Outside the saloon stood 3 men, leaning against the porch rail with the lazy arrogance of men who had nothing good in mind. Their hats tipped low, guns slung at their sides, eyes sharp and cruel. Samuel slowed his steps. He had met the type before, drifters who preyed on weakness, men who would see a Comanche girl not as a person but as an opportunity. "Stay close to me," he muttered. Naomi nodded, her face tightening, her steps matching his. Inside the store, Samuel quickly purchased dried goods, flour, and a bit of salt pork, trying to keep the exchange brisk. But he felt the weight of eyes on his back. When they stepped out, the three men shifted, one spitting into the dirt. "Well now," the tallest drawled, his grin mean, "what we got here? Ain't often you see one of them savages walkin' around with a good Christian man. She yours, cowboy?" Naomi stiffened beside him, but Samuel stepped forward, placing himself between her and their stares. "She's with me," he said evenly. "And that's all you need to know." The man laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. "With you, huh? That a fact? Can't imagine why a man'd waste his time protectin' somethin' like her. Unless," his grin widened. "Unless she's payin' you with somethin' worth protectin'. Naomi's cheeks flushed with shame and fury, and Samuel's blood boiled. His hand twitched near his holster, but he forced himself to stay steady. Violence here would only bring more trouble. Instead, he fixed the man with a hard glare. "Careful what you say, friend. A man's worth ain't in how he sneers at others. Now if you'll excuse us, we'll be on our way." For a tense moment, it seemed the men might press it further. But Samuel held their gaze without flinching, and finally they stepped aside, muttering curses. He guided Naomi past them quickly, his hand gentle at her back. Once they were clear, Naomi's breath came in shaky bursts. "Why didn't you fight them?" she asked, her voice thick. "They insulted me." "They would have," she trailed off, unable to finish. Samuel sighed, shaking his head. "Because fightin' them would have proved them right, that we're nothin' but anger and blood. Sometimes, Naomi, strength is in walkin' away. Trust me, I've seen enough graves dug to know it." She looked at him, her eyes shimmering, and for the first time, Samuel saw not just gratitude in her gaze, but admiration. "You're not like the others," she whispered. They walked on until the post was a speck behind them. As night fell, they camped under a canopy of stars. The silence of the plains was vast, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Naomi sat across from him, her hands clasped around her knees. After a long time, she said, "You know what I thought, when I was trapped on those rails? I thought no one would come. I thought the world would let me die there, because it did not care. But then you came. And every time since, when I think the world will turn cruel, you stand in front of me. Why?" Samuel stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. He thought of the countless faces he had passed on his wandering roads, people broken by loss, by hunger, by cruelty. He thought of how easy it was to walk by, to shrug and say the world was too heavy to carry. But something in Naomi's voice, her belief that kindness was too rare to exist, cut him deep. He looked up at her and said simply, "Because I won't be the man who walks away. Not when someone needs me." Naomi's breath hitched. She lowered her head, and for the first time, she let herself cry without shame. Samuel didn't move closer, didn't reach out, he just sat there, steady as the earth itself, giving her the space to let go. When her tears quieted, she lifted her gaze, her face streaked but calm. "Then maybe," she whispered, "maybe I'm not cursed after all." The fire crackled between them, and for a long time, neither spoke. But Samuel knew something had changed that night. Naomi no longer looked at him as just the man who had saved her from the rails. She looked at him as the man who had given her a reason to believe the world could still hold kindness. And for Samuel, who had wandered rootless for so long, that trust was the heaviest, and most precious, gift he had ever been given.